Welcome to Ask the Expert on Contingent Workforce Strategies LinkedIn group. It is the number one community for all things contingent workforce, gig economy, freelance, the future of work, you name it. And I have a really cool topic today that talks about technology and the future. And I have an incredible guest that has seen a lot and continues to see more and has a really good crystal ball and has always had a really good crystal ball on what's happening in the future and is also a Star Trek fan. So there may be some Star Trek conversation as well. So the topic of today is AI is really starting to rewrite talent solutions ecosystem, but it's not ready to run the ship. And there's a lot of talk about AI the last 2 years. Agentic has really got, a lot of steam behind it. And there's talk of orchestration seems to be the new word of choice and the buzzword of choice we're hearing out there. And that's all cool. But with large enterprise programs, there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of things that can break and go wrong. And leaving that up to AI agents may not be the correct way to do it. And quite honestly, it's not mature enough to handle all the complexities and different aspects of it. And the guest on our show today is none other than Steve Dern, a pillar in the contingent workforce industry, over 20 years of experience in talent solutions, running MSP programs, understanding the EOR, AOR marketplace, overseeing partnerships in the ecosystem and bringing people together in different types of vendors and solutions. From being at Guiding Group to IQ Navigator, Magnet, GRI, and Coupa. He's now the founder of Tremper Consulting and has advised enterprise clients and contingent workforce solutions providers around the globe. So Steve, I'm so happy we could connect and thank you for taking time on your schedule today.
Thank you, Jeff. Can't wait to get into the subject matter. And it is always so much fun to be able to reunite with you, and everything that you're bringing to the table is absolutely fantastic. You tatted me up pretty big, but I am certainly kneeling at the throne of the king when it comes to technology innovation and workforce solutions as a whole. So
I appreciate that. And, we've been through a lot of things together over the years, and it's amazing to see the evolution continue, right?
Yes.
So, post-pandemic, post kind of 2020, 2021, the whole talent market seems to just be in a funk, right?
It's a weird, yeah.
It's economic based, a lot of it that's driving it. But I think even on the solution side, although technology has advanced, we're in this kind of funky area where, the economic drivers are going back to where we were in 2008, 2009, where costs savings is king, hiring is very cautious, and demand is up and down and uneven, which is often very good for our industry. So this topic of AI, where there's the advances are incredible, and I've been following it and being part of it. But, just adding AI, does it really create value? Does it create risk? Does it actually do what it's saying it's going to do for us? Or is it there? Are we moving in the right direction? Give me your perspective on that.
Well, I think that when you look at AI and how it's being applied to, let's call it the contingent workforce economy. With economy, you got suppliers and buyers, and, mixed in with all of that, you've got talent. And that is really what the for lack of a better word, commodity is that is being sold and purchased in our world. Um, it's like a lot of things. I think you have to figure out what is what is the goal of what you're looking for. What are you looking for AI to do? Because you may have lofty goals that you're thinking, hey, I want to turn over everything that I have in my operations, in my sales strategies, in my product strategies, in the strategic decisions that I'm making. I want to automate all of this. And it sounds very, George Jetson,
Yeah.
something Mr. Spacely might want to do. It can even sound a little bit Mr. Spock, to use your Star Trek reference earlier. And we will get to the Star Trek reference later on. I assure you, I will, dig up my childhood nerddom along the way here, all in a fun way, but with an interesting take on it. Now that I'm, in my late 50s and talking about AI and all of that, there is no doubt it is adding value. I mean, if you go into any firm, if you're dealing with a staffing agency, if you're dealing with a client, they're utilizing AI in different ways. Sometimes it is, we need job descriptions written up. So it could be in terms of business writing. It can be in helping to craft proposals. It can be looking at the data, the analytics. What are the different angles that you look at things? And I'm always one, the one thing that I preach at Trumpeter Consulting is we help companies look at things through the lens of different stakeholders. And I think that AI has the opportunity to help speed that up in many areas. It's automating some processes along the way. A lot of times the VMS technology platforms are starting to incorporate more of that in like their onboarding tracking and things like that, and maybe certifications that go on. So it can help in that regard. I'm not entirely sure, though, we trust AI to make the strategic decisions yet, though. This is still fairly new. It's, on the big scale of things, it is in its infancy. And I think that companies need to be cautious about it. And the biggest reason that jumps out to me is around data integrity risk. If you think about AI and how it works, it is learning, it is evolving as it keeps working with the users and things like that. Well, the old phrase, junk in, junk out.
Yes.
Back when, Lotus 1, 2, 3 was what we were entering data into back in our college days and everything. And then it eventually flipped over to Excel and so on and so forth. But junk in, junk out still applies with AI today. Now, it might be able to learn faster, it might be able to adjust faster. But one of the things that I think is lacked is kind of that rigor around data integrity and how far we can start to incorporate those things into AI producing output for us.
Yeah.
With data, it also depends on, well, how is each individual firm defining certain things? So you've got nomenclature involved and all of that. So it's a whole new culture with a whole new language element that we have to make sure we're going through some degree of rigor on to make sure that we start playing on consistent rules of engagement, if you will, as you're talking about the integration of the technology.
Yeah. And out of that, I heard it is providing value in components and
Yes.
parts of processes to automate processes and to speed up some of these manual processes that were very time consuming, difficult to deal with often. You mentioned, the job descriptions and taxonomies to review them and update them and clean
Mm-hmm.
them up. That would be a long, painful manual process to do that, whereas they can do them a lot more rapidly, and then you're just tweaking them after the fact. The reporting on the back end, it can read data and put things together very quickly. But I didn't hear you say it can take care of everything end to end, right? And I didn't
Yeah,
hear you say organizations are ready for AI often, even in helping in certain circumstances because of data integrity and data issues. And so I think
hmm,
it's we're at this interesting point where you're right, where it can help you with some of these things, but if there's bad data or it's learning and it's learning wrong, if it passes on that wrong information to the next person or makes a hiring decision, let's say,
exactly.
based on wrong information or information that they assume things on with no guardrails, it can get you in big trouble.
Yeah,
So
and
it's really important to have the human.
it goes back to communication, taxonomies, if you will. How do we most effectively communicate? How do we define things as we're working with AI platforms so that we can end up getting not only the output that we want, but the output that's going to have integrity behind it?
And that is just a massive comment right there,
Yeah.
is the integrity of the data to make proper decisions going forward, right? Because if it's not there, it's either assumes something or it's using wrong data or a wrong process and it's spitting out wrong results. And we're assuming that is true, it causes havoc, right? What are you like, what are some of the
Yeah. And,
benefits?
and you said making the decisions going forward. That's not necessarily AI.
Yeah.
I'm
And that's
sorry.
the thing. What are some of the benefits? Like we've seen, you've mentioned a few things around the usage of AI working well. Um, what are the benefits of getting this right? And do you think it will ever drive the ship, or do you think humans will be driving the ship and continuing to use tool for the AI and these tools for the foreseeable future?
Well, I think that in my lifetime, the human ego still exists, and it still exists to a large scale, particularly as you elevate up organizations. We consider ourselves to be visionaries. We are thought leaders. We are people who are going to drive ideas and new products and new solutions along the way. I think the human ego will check AI at a certain point and say, okay, you've added your value to me. You've given me the information that I want. You've helped me streamline processes. You've even helped me readjust my workforce strategies. Lord knows, every week it seems like there is a new update coming out of Silicon Valley
Yeah.
talking about, hey, we're eliminating X thousand jobs because of the advances we've made with artificial intelligence in our workplace. Uh, that'll get you a good distance down the path, but it's not going to help carry you over to the next invention, to identifying the next great customer base and coming up with the strategy that goes along with that. It will give you information so that the human leaders can then make those decisions along the way. I think it's just like many other technology platforms. It is a premium tool in our tool belt that more and more companies are going to be utilizing a lot more as it goes forward. But again, I still think that the best decisions, the true revolutionaries, are going to use that as a tool, as an automator along the way. Uh, but the strategic elements of business still remain very much a human, creative, and intuitive process.
Yeah, it's like AI creates massive efficiencies, probably more at the execution layer that have been identified now, where you can put this in to create incredible efficiencies. versus,
Yes.
like you've said, the strategic layer. And even at that final decision, should this person join our organization or not? I still, and I've said this for a long time, but still feel that an algorithm has never beat one of the top recruiters, right? And at some point there'll be the chess match, right, between Watson and the grandmaster in recruiting, where you're going to say, okay, let's recruit a candidate versus a amazing recruiter. The heavy lifting is in the sourcing and the basic screening. The final decision around does that person make a fit into this organization and will do what they've said they did during the screening process to get the outcome you want. I don't I don't see an algorithm saying that, making that decision. I see them, the algorithms and AI, helping with that very manual process to create that incredible efficiencies to get to the ballpark of candidates. But the final decision still seems to be in the hands of humans. It'll be interesting
I
to see
think
where it
so. I
goes,
think
but right?
I think where the gap can close is going to be on certain types of positions. You know, the high volume, they're repeatable. It's call center, it's light industrial. You know, those types of roles that are always going to be needed. They're constantly talent pooling for them along the way as much as you can with lower end roles and all of that. I think AI will evolve just like, you know, a lot of the, you know, skills assessments or the personality assessments that are used today. You know, in 1992, I was working corporate HR for a department store chain, and a new VP came in and said, "We're going to use this tool to identify who are the workers we want to bring on because it had a 75% success rate at his old philosophy of the organization. And did we actually need human resource managers in the stores and things like that? Last I checked, they still had plenty of HR managers in the stores. But I think for certain roles, AI will have that impact. But if it's something that's strategic, it's something you're recruiting one at a time, things like that, where you know you're looking for management talent, you're looking for sales talent along the way. There's still plenty of human interaction that's going to have to go into that because you have to balance it out against the culture. And culture is ever changing in today's world. I mean, you look at mission statements and core values that companies list. I'm sorry, a lot of companies are changing that on an annual basis, depending on what they need to do with their organization. So it'll be a little bit of a moving target.
Interesting, like talking about adoption of this. There, what are some of the obstacles to adoption and some of the potential risks that come with this, right? Is risks one of those obstacles that people are concerned with that no one's really talking about yet?
I
What are
think,
some of these obstacles we're seeing from an implementation more at scale than dabbling that we see today?
yeah, I think that, you know, if there is the day to day recruiters and recruiting staff, you know, people in talent acquisition, I think one risk is they're threatened by the possibility of is AI going to replace me? So, how far are they willing to go with that? Does that end up resulting in unanticipated and perhaps unwanted turnover in the organization along the way? I think as you move up the ranks, it becomes very much a question of, you know, how has this been tested? What are the case studies we've seen with similar organizations? And they want to know those success stories, and they want to know what was the benefit that this client received and what were the unintended consequences that they went through. Were they good unintended consequences, perhaps? Did they maybe get an unexpected benefit along the way, or was it just negative? So I think the smart firms are going to do their due diligence. I think the AI providers and people in the technology world are going to need to up their marketing game and up how they present AI to an organization and the value that it can bring, but also tailor that to their audience along the way. I think it's going to be a different message from, you know, junior level talent acquisition than it is a CFO or a CTO along the way.
Yeah, and at an executive level, they're looking to protect the organization and also look at the strategic side of utilization of this to advance the organization. And I think some of those folks are the ones that are also saying, well, show me your governance. Show me how this is regulated. Show me when something goes wrong, how does that react? Show me that it doesn't, expose your IP. Show me that it doesn't have biases. Show me. And unfortunately or unfortunately, I think it's more unfortunately, there's there hasn't been a lot. It's been hype. Hey, this is going to revolutionize things. And there hasn't been the talk of downside. It's almost when you talk of downside or need for governance and regulations of this, those people are naysayers and said they're crazy.
Yeah, get
Um,
off my yard.
but 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 if I'm a CFO or if I'm the chief legal counsel of a company or a CEO, and I have no proof that it's not going to do these things, and like a certification process or something like that, I'm reluctant to go forward, even with the efficiencies and the cost reduction. And well, I should be reluctant. It's maybe um, a better way to
Might
phrase
depend
it,
on the industry you're in. So,
right? Where I'm not just worried about the short-term stock price. I'm worried about protecting my company overall or advancing my company overall, long-term thinking versus short-term thinking. And are you seeing anything in that realm around talent solutions? Because right now, what we're seeing is lawsuits around biases of selection tools,
yeah.
etc. Are you seeing the technology and AI companies trying to catch up with putting more, and you say marketing, but
Yeah.
even just having some sort of governance, not needed to be marketed to me, but when I ask, you got to give me a real answer, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that they are starting to, from a marketing perspective or, strategy perspective, I think some of those groups are being formed. I think the market and the lawsuits are kind of forcing their hand a little bit. I think it's been a little reactive overall. So, maybe conversations like what we're having today are going to continue to nudge that along the way. But it certainly, I haven't seen it as a proactive measure. I've seen it more as a reactive measure to the market.
Yeah. In terms of readiness, I think, is that one of the obstacles as well? The fear of the unknown is often there, but also when you think about readiness, you mentioned data integrity. And if I'm a large enterprise organization, I have multiple systems all over the place with different variations of data and data capabilities, all of those things. Um, it, are you seeing that as a potential obstacle to further advancements? Or is AI being the tool that's helping with the data, cleaning the data and bringing it into a unified format as well? Like, where are we in the readiness of organizations when it comes to their data?
Well, I think you bring up a good point. I think AI can be certainly a positive element in terms of organizing the data the right way. if you look back historically, going back into the Steve Dern has been in the industry forever perspective, think about VMS technology and how long it took until integrations were commonplace, much less open APIs. That is still something that is growing among some of the VMS players in terms of how deep they go, who they will integrate with, et cetera. It makes sense to me that AI may be looking at some of those same challenges, whether it's with ERP systems, HRIS, financial systems, whatever the case might be. Different ones may have different preferences along the way. Just like Workday may have a Vendly preference, like SAP may have a Fieldglass preference, Coupa obviously has a Coupa preference, so on and so forth. Are we going to start to see that with certain AI platforms in terms of preferences toward those systems?
It'll be interesting to see, right? And whose AI integrates better with other systems and other AI agents, right? In the hype phase that we're in, everybody talks to everybody nicely. But as we log on to Zoom meetings versus Google Meet versus Teams, there's obvious that they don't like to integrate often. And they like to mess with each other's technology because we still are in a free market society, and competitive nature of that, people are looking to take advantage against their competitors, right? So it'll be interesting to see how integrations work.
And then that next level will be, I think it's going to be interesting to see who starts acquiring who. The old merger and integration play, or merger and acquisition play, excuse me. Where will battle lines be drawn in that regard? So
Steve, we've talked about a lot around the risks and some of the obstacles to implementation and more adoption. If we were to look at some of the best practices you've seen, and you can really look at your experience as well in adopting talent solutions over the years. When it comes to AI specifically now too, what are some of the best practices that you're seeing in utilizing AI in an organization to get some quick wins, etc., versus that analysis paralysis and that fear in some cases not allowing you to at least move forward, right? At least move forward.
Yeah, I think that, like anytime there is a new component of technology or automation that comes into play, the first place I start seeing it really comes into the RFP process many times. And that's going to be consulting firms who are working with their clients. And it could be a small independent like me. It could be the IBMs of the world who are massive and doing their consult with their Fortune 1000 clients along the way, et cetera. But, you start to see more consult to their clients to say, let's look at what the scope of this can be. Let's look at how our providers are utilizing this new technology. So 10 years ago, we started to see that prevalent with direct sourcing and the direct sourcing platforms that were out there. And, it started to expand to freelance management systems and things like that. Now it's AI in recent years. So there's questions being asked about, what are some of the tools that you are using? How are you using them? How do their outputs end up impacting your operational processes and the solutions as a whole? Is it, hey, we're using this to help score candidates in the VMS platform or whatever platform it might be who are being submitted by agencies? Can it be something that is used as part of the reporting matrix and building out scorecards to track performance management elements of workers, of firms? Does it help track SOW milestone activities and things like that? So, to what degree are you hoping that solutions providers are going to be adopting it? And where are they going to draw the line on it? Because in the end, they still have human beings that have to demonstrate their compelling value proposition to the solution or to the client as a solution provider along the way. And that's what's going to help nurture that relationship and the intelligence along with it. So there's certainly tactical applications that are going to be abound there. They're going to be asked about. But I think it is also smart to ask, what does this do in terms of your business modeling, in terms of strategic decision making that goes on, in terms of maybe identifying supplier management strategies, understanding localization of foreign markets. If you're expanding somewhere over in APAC or Europe, can it speed up that process along the way? That can be a huge benefit. Certainly from a technology or even a managed services perspective.
Yeah, so the tactical side of things, there's a lot of applications for it, right?
Yeah.
The strategic decision making, what you've been saying is it's great for information purposes and research and some of the manual processes around that to help speed up decision making, typically by a human at this point where there's
Yes.
need for judgment, context, and creativity. And then readiness around existing systems, data, all of that, really to start to start the project to make sure your data is clean and
Mm-hmm.
can provide accuracy to help in not only tactical execution, but also strategic decision making when utilizing the
And
AI side of things.
and then eventually, I think it'll start to get into integration questions along with it with client systems too.
Yeah. So this has been a fascinating conversation in terms of, there's so much hype, so much marketing, and then there's the reality, right? And we've been through many of marketing cycles of what's the latest buzzword, what's the new innovation. And then from our experience, typically you hear about it, and then it's 5 to 10 years later that it starts to actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
But we're also, we can always, the hype of AI is everything's moving so fast. Well, and that's wonderful, but humans have to move along with it to trust it and implement it. And what we're talking about here is, hey, AI is fantastic, but it's not running the ship. It's helping you run the ship. So keeping those humans in the loop when it comes into things that need judgment, creativity, and really to steer the organization and your projects and programs versus letting AI take over and orchestrate everyone like you're hearing about, right? You're starting to hear about orchestration, but it's not there yet.
One of the things that you led off with in bringing out my childhood nerdiness was Star Trek and everything. So I want to share a story with you. And I wrote an article on this a couple months ago. So if you want to read the whole thing, it's on trumpeter.com. But I grew up a Star Trek fan as a kid. I was a Trekkie, met Gene Roddenberry, who was the creator when I was about 8 years old. And every now and then, my dog Ziggy and I have to go down to the basement because he needs some indoor playtime. And I'll flip on, old reruns that air every night on, I think it's Heroes and Icons. There's my ad for them. But there was one episode called The Ultimate Computer that was one of my favorites because it was very intense, action-packed. And the storyline behind it was there was this genius computer technologist named Dr. Datestrom. And he had created a new computer system that would integrate with the ship's engines, the ship's computers, and all that. ship, of course, was the USS Enterprise and Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock and all of that. Well, the Enterprise was going to be part of the war games, and it was a testing of the new M5 system. And of course, chaos ends up ensuing because the system doesn't behave quite as everyone thought it would, and it blows up a freighter ship, and then it starts attacking the other starships in the war games, completely unsuspected, kills hundreds of people and things like that. Now, in the end, of course, Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock figure out how to disable it. They save the rest of Starfleet, and life goes on. But the key thing here is perspective. When I watched that in the 70s, I was just an excited, 7, 8-year-old kid watching a cool show. When I started to get older and understand life and society, I looked at it and I thought, okay, it's the 80s now. This show really is about how it's replacing humanity in certain roles. So if you think about the 80s, what was that? It was robotics. We were replacing humans with robots in the 80s and the 90s. And all you got to do is look at, the automotive industry, and you can see a huge impact there, so on and so forth. I watched this 6 months ago. And I say that because it had been a long time since I'd seen it. But I watched it and had a whole different lens. It was very much, it did talk about robotics, but it talked about artificial intelligence too. Because part of the challenge was that Dr. Daystrom had built the M5 system with human engrams impressed in its coding. Well, whose were they? Well, they were his own. So he had biases, he had his own value system, and all of that built into how the AI was working, and it kept learning and evolving from that. So, in Star Trek, which was, I think this episode was done back in the late 60s, it ended up being, okay, a bunch of people died, starships were destroyed, et cetera. If we look at it today, we've got to make sure that there is some caution there along the way. And that's why I do talk about, whether it's legislation, whether it is best practices, but getting those definitions, getting those walls set up around security, around data integrity, things like that, so that the contemporary user and the people who are going to go forward long after you and I are gone are able to utilize artificial intelligence to the best of its capabilities with integrity along the way. And let's face it, we are still in the infancy. So this is the time that, companies and governments, legislators, et cetera, we need to kind of take a moment and take a look at how we want those structures to be set up, because that's going to influence the best way we can get the most compelling value out of AI.
Well, and often, although we're trying to move so fast and rapidly forward, some of the fastest ways to move forward is to slow down. So slow down to move faster, right?
Yes.
As a wisdom comment. And looking at some of these things would probably allow you to move forward with more confidence than guessing if it's in place or not. And so to slow
Yeah.
down, to move faster in adoption is often not bad wisdom.
Yeah. Very Yoda of you. My compliments. Yeah.
Amazing. So, Steve,
All you
again,
need are the green ears. So
yes, I'll do that next Halloween. So, thank you for taking the time to have a conversation on this.
thank
And
you.
I, your perspective on talent solutions is second to none. You've seen the evolution of this happening, and you've seen adoption happen and innovation happen over your years. And so that experience you can take out VMS or direct sourcing technology or name the technology and the innovation and replace it with AI. The human mind works a lot of the same ways in adopting new things and allowing change to happen and be successful. So thank you for the time and giving that perspective because, although there's a ton of promise in implementing AI if done right, but it's not ready to run the ship quite yet.
Correct. Correct.
So
But
thank you
we'll
for your
get
time.
there eventually, I'm sure. Or someone's going to try to.
You got it. And it will. We'll advance as we go forward. So thanks again for your time.